All right, everybody, welcome back to the SCB Steeler Fan Podcast and Hangout presented by SteelCityBlitz.com and Body Tech Gym, North Hills, Pittsburgh. I almost forgot who it was, man.
Well,
My name is Matt. I'm sitting there thinking, it's a gym, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so stupid. And then the logo's right here in front of me. Anyways, welcome back to the show. We are recording this live, so of course there's going to be screw-ups, but that's okay because that's how we roll. So my name is Matt, his name is Mark, and again, we are the SCB Steeler Fan Hangout and Podcast. What is going on, man?
Man, we're in the lull, Matt. We're in that lull between all the heavy free agency and then the draft. So draft talk is going to start picking up. We're just about a month out now from the draft. It is amazing. I don't remember a year where the mock drafts had the Steelers taking so many different guys. Last year, did anybody have Shazier? Not really. But at the same time, there seemed to be some kind of consensus. This year, I mean, I looked at 6 different mock drafts today, and I think I saw 5 different guys. So, which comes with the territory at 22. But we'll get into the draft more as we go over the next month.
Yeah. The draft is fast approaching, and we will do some more shows, have some special guests, friends of the site who are all about the draft. So that's going to be a good time. But for now, we're still talking free agency and some of the Steelers' moves that they have made. Of course, we're just going to talk a little bit about the Ben deal yet, even though that happened about, I think it was last week. But in any event, you knew it was going to end up being, when it was all said and done, a $100 million plus deal if all the incentives are reached and all that type of thing. But this was a no-brainer. When you got a franchise quarterback, you can't help but sign him. And I mean, he knew he was going to get a lot of money. The Steelers knew they were going to have to pay it because if they didn't, anybody else would have.
Well, it comes back to the basic question of, am I going to pay this guy who I know is a proven commodity in the league, or am I just going to let him go somewhere else and try to run with some other quarterback? Well, for those of us old enough, we remember what those years between Terry Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger looked like. Names like I mean the Tom Zacks, the Cordells. I mean, the Kent Graham,
Mark Malone, David Whitley, Cordell Stewart.
all of it, and just for that reason alone, I think you got to lock up Ben. I still think this guy's got 4 or 5 solid years ahead of him if he continues to do the right things and in terms of take care of himself and get protection from the line and get the running game, of course. So it's a deal that had to be done. It's not a huge cap friendly deal. It did shave off about $1 million, but the good part, this is not a Joe Flacco, a Jay Cutler. It's not one of those deals that just kills your team. This was a deal that was good for Ben and good for the Steelers.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm sure the Steelers took into account what happened with the Flacco deal and how much it hampered, the Ravens' abilities in free agency and to keep certain players. And I think they also really saw how Flacco kind of tanked after he signed that. And I mean, Ben's going to get his share of money up front. He's going to get a whole lot of money. He's going to retire a Steeler. They locked him up when they knew they needed to. So all in all, it worked out for everybody. And you're right. I mean, in this day and age, there's only so much cap-friendly moves you can do when you're signing a guy to $100 million. Right. I mean, if you're signing him to a 5-year deal, he'll be able to restructure every year and push more of that dead money out if they need to next year and whatnot. But for now, I mean, you're right. It saved about $1 million. Yeah, I was kind of thinking it might save a little more, but in the end, a deal, it is what it is, and we got our franchise quarterback. So it was something that had to be done, and they definitely made the right move in getting him locked up again.
Yeah, and it just takes a huge, bit of doubt off of everything. Your quarterback's there. You got him there for the next 4 or 5 years, and now we can go and try to fix other areas now on a team that definitely has areas that need fixing.
Speaking of areas that need fixing, let's go to the defense where, for a few days or a week there or so, your starting outside linebackers were Arthur Moats and Jarvis Jones.
Yeah.
Now, because World's
Yeah.
retired, so, we'll talk about Worlds in a second, a little bit more on that because I got something to say on that. But I think this played right into James Harrison's hands, if you ask me. He kind of bided his time. He posted up a little Instagram video. He was doing some tweets, and pretty much he knew that once Worlds left, the Steelers were pretty much going to be banging down his door to his agent, telling him, "Look, we need you to come back." I was in the camp of not bringing him back only because, they've cut ties with the rest of the older players so far, except for Troy. Yet we don't know what's going to happen with him. But I was all for just moving on and dealing with it. But the fact is, according to his agent, that he's coming back, obviously on a 2-year deal, and he's going to be in a supportive role. So I think at this point, he is going to have to fight for his starting job back. But, what does this say about A, Harrison, and B, Jarvis Jones?
Well, first of all, the as you air quoted there, the supporting role, I don't think he's coming back to be a supporting guy. He's coming back, maybe not necessarily to start, but he's coming back to play. You're not going to bring this guy back, sit him on the bench, have him be a player-coach type thing. That's what Joey Porter's for, basically. I think he's going to get snaps. Now, as far as what happens with Jarvis Jones, do you move him over to the left and you split time with him and, say, Arthur Moats, and then you've got Harrison on the right, and all off-season I've heard these great things about Jordan Zumwalt, the rookie from last year who had an injury and really couldn't do much. He's packed on 20 pounds of muscle. They love his acumen for the game. He's really, really smart. They really like what they have with him. Is it possible he's the rotation guy or Howard Jones? I don't know. I still think, Matt, they're going to go with a pass rusher either in the first or the second round, and it'll be somebody that probably, plays a lot in the preseason so that Harrison doesn't have to and gets those reps, only to see Harrison take them in the regular season. But I'll be surprised if he doesn't play the bulk of the snaps in each game, depending on his health.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this, and like I said, this kind of played right into his hands because he knew the Steelers were going to need him.
Yeah.
And let's face this guy, even at in his he's going to be 37, right?
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy can still bench press a Buick. He's in phenomenal shape. He's a workout machine. There's no reason he won't be ready and in football shape. Obviously, they're going to, kind of take it easy on him in training camp and in the OTAs and all that. So, he'll get some preseason reps, but don't expect to see him out there very much, regardless of which game it is. So, but you're right. He's going to be back. He's coming back, and he's going to bust his butt and try and start. There's no two ways about it. But so, having said that, what does this say about their lack of confidence in Jarvis Jones? At this point, this kid, he had an I can't think of the word I'm trying to say. He didn't have a very good rookie year, and then last year, of course, he got hurt. And this year, this would be a time when you would expect, a first-round draft pick to really come on, seize his position, and start kind of being a leader on this team. And right now, obviously they have depth issues, but if this guy was coming on like gangbusters, maybe they wouldn't have needed Harrison.
I'm going to be the optimist here. I don't know why, I just am. When he got hurt last year in the Carolina game, and oddly enough, a lot of us have argued that the game he got hurt in and the play he got hurt in was one of his best plays as a pro. He was making not a sack, it was a tackle for loss, if I remember correctly. I just wonder, I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar, I'm not going to say anything like that, but I wonder if this bringing Harrison in is an insurance for Jones in case he doesn't live up to the hype this year, because this is it. Whether he's injured or whether he plays the whole season, doesn't play well, this is it for him. He's got to show now. but I just have a feeling he's going to be a better football player this year. And again, a lot of that's going to depend on the reps, going to depend on what side he's on, whether he's on the left with potentially Moats or if he stays up on the right where he's been. And again, who else comes in there, whether it's a free agent, somebody on the roster, or a rookie. So I'm holding out hope that this guy's going to produce. I mean, we saw some good things, some flashes. Is the consistency there? Absolutely not. But this is his make or break year, Matt. No two ways about it.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I'm kind of in your boat in the sense that I'm pulling for him to have a good year. He needs to have a good year. I mean, he's a first-round pick. There were a lot of people that doubted, the Steelers for taking him. They thought he was, too much of a situational pass rusher. He wasn't going to be able to do everything that a linebacker needs to do when you're playing in the Steelers defense. So I guess I'm not ready to hang him out to dry yet, but you're right. Coming into your third year, the defense is clearly going in the young direction. They got the new defensive coordinator now. They're going to be looking for big things from this kid, and he has got to produce because there's already issues with who's going to start to begin with, and there's lack of depth. And, assuming they do draft a pass rusher, he's not going to start right away unless Butler just throws him to the Wolves, which who knows whether that's going to happen or not. So they've got a lot of issues to address. But, yeah, I kind of found it interesting that if I'm Jarvis Jones, I'm a bit nervous right now. I'm going to come into camp, OTAs, mini camps, everything, the greatest shape of my life, bust my butt, keep my mouth shut, and do the best job I can.
Well, everything I'm hearing, Matt, is that he's putting in the time right now. He's added some weight via some muscle, which I think he always needed. If the explosion and the speed is still there, then we could be looking at a really good young linebacker. But if it doesn't all connect, and we don't have any knowledge of whether Keith Butler's defense is going to be as difficult as Dick LeBeau's, if it's a simplified version, if it's something different. We don't know that. But I think we have to expect that it's going to be a little more user-friendly, and that might play into Jarvis Jones' wheelhouse perfectly, and we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to think that Keith Butler's going to want to put his own stamp on this defense. Mm-hmm. From what we hear, he's a very aggressive guy. He's a lot like Joey Porter approves of him already, saying he's very opportunistic. Blitzer, loves to bring pressure, so we'll see how much different he is from his predecessor LeBeau. Yeah. I also actually thought it was kind of funny, before we get off the Harrison thing, was he had put out, was it a tweet or on his Instagram, one or the other, that it came down to Tennessee and Pittsburgh, and once he said that, the Roonies were like, "Oh my God, come back to Pittsburgh! What are you doing?"
Well, it was really interesting in the timing because he put it out on Instagram, and it basically said, my loyalty and love for Coach LeBeau in Tennessee, or my loyalty to the Steelers organization and the fans. And I really was thinking to myself, like, well, does any team really have to decide yet? I mean, and so I start thinking to myself, has either of these teams even contacted him? And as it looked like, they must have both been talking to him, because within hours of that Instagram post, he signs with the Steelers. And I think ultimately what he was looking at was, the Titans had signed Brian Arakpo. They had re-signed Morgan as their outside backers. So he probably didn't see as much playing time there. He also saw the roster in Tennessee, which let's face it, it's not real good, and thought, hey, I'm here in Pittsburgh. Let's finish it out here. And obviously he has some rapport with Keith Butler, his position coach for most of his career. So, obviously it's easy for us to say, Matt, it's the right move. He's staying in the black and gold, but we'll see. I mean, for all we know, he could stub his toe the first preseason game and never be the same. I don't know.
Don't wish that on us, man. No jinx us.
Well, yeah.
All right, so let's see. Moving on. Oh, yeah, I saw an article about Ike Taylor. Apparently he's not getting any of the offers he wanted or any offers at all, so I think he's pretty much resigned the fact that he's about done playing football. And apparently he's going to pursue a career in broadcasting now. I guess he can follow in Ryan Clark's footsteps. But this is just me, and I don't know that Ike Taylor's going to be the greatest fit for a broadcaster. I don't know. I mean, he does a podcast, or excuse me, he did a podcast all the time with the Trib.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yep.
And he's a great guy, loves the fans and everything. But I don't know. How do you think he can do as a broadcaster?
You know what? I think part of me says he would be more entertaining than a Ryan Clark, but at the same time, I have trouble understanding Ike a lot of the time too, especially when he gets excited, and I just don't see that. I don't see that translating well to a broadcast booth or sitting around a table chatting it up with the other NFL players and coaches. Look, I mean, hey, if Warren Sapp can get a gig, anybody can. But I look at Ike and I love the guy. Don't get me wrong, I really do. I mean, talk about a guy that got the most out of his talent and coming from a small school. But I don't know. I just don't see his charisma is going to have to carry him. Let's put it that way.
Well, they don't call him Ike Swagging you for nothing. But
there you go.
Just flopping over to the offensive side quick. The signing of D'Angelo Williams.
Yeah.
How do you not love this guy? I mean, he's a fan favorite. He's active with Steeler Nation already on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube videos, Instagram, everything. The guy is, he's taken to his new home in Pittsburgh. He's, checking out the local flavor, all the, having his Permane Brothers sandwich and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this guy, he's hungry. He seems to understand his role way better than the Garrett Blount ever did. I mean, he knows he's there to support Le'Veon. He knows that, if Bell is suspended for 2 to 4 games to start the year, he's going to be the starter. I mean, I thought about the Steelers signing this guy when he became a free agent initially at the end of the year. I think it's a great move. He's big, strong, fast, he's humble, and he's hungry.
He's the perfect package right now, Matt, as you alluded to. He's doing everything right. Of course, that whole social media thing is always such a fine line because, as we saw with Ryan Clark, he was a great social media guy. He was great with the fans at training camp, and then all of a sudden, a couple dumb comments here and there, and the whole thing just blew up in his face.
Right.
I'm not saying that's going to happen with D'Angelo Williams because I do. I love his presence on there. He's great with everybody that he talks to. But you just wonder, what's going to happen if he does get into a game and has a crucial fumble or drop or misses a blitz pickup or something like that. This is Pittsburgh. People are going to turn fast if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And so I do worry about that. But in terms of him being a player, man, if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be an extremely valuable part of the team. I mean, now you're talking about when Le'Veon Bell comes out of the game, you're not worried about whether a guy just, is going to pound forward for 3 or 4 yards. You're talking about a guy that can break one. Whether he's running the ball off the tackle, whether he's catching a swing pass. I mean, you're now talking about a legitimate threat to do some things, and I don't know how many teams have that in a backup running back. So it's a good signing, it's a safe signing, and the most important part, like you said, he knows what his role is, and the Steelers did a little bit better job of vetting this guy than certainly they did LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah. I think. It wasn't a huge signing. It didn't break the bank or anything. But
right.
I mean, Williams was. He was caught in that double backfield in Carolina for a long time.
Yep.
He had some injury issues, but he's a team player. He's got a good attitude. He seems to be hungry to try and win. A championship. And I think it's going to work out great. You said as long as he stays healthy, keeps his head on straight, and I think it's a great addition. So I'm excited about that. And I guess according to Colbert, the Steelers really aren't going to do a whole lot more in free agency, right? Last we heard, they're for the most part done.
How do you get done doing very little? I mean, let's put it this way: without D'Angelo and without basically Ben's new deal, I mean, this is like molasses going downhill in January off a mountain. I mean, it's just a slow, methodical, boring process once again. And I'm stunned, man. I thought this team was going to spend a little bit more money. I thought they were going to try to go maybe get a bigger name cornerback. But the price was high. The market was really high on defensive backs, and it scared them off. They definitely lowballed Patrick Robinson and Sterling Moore, who I thought would have fit great. And Tremont Williams didn't even bother coming in. He's a guy I had pegged since end of the season. I thought for sure he was coming in. And he just kind of said, sorry, and not going to bother. And then he goes and signs with Cleveland for 3 years and $21 million. So it was out of their range. I respect them for sticking to their guns and not paying more than what they wanted to. But now the secondary's thin, and they're going to have to address it in the draft and through rookie free agency. And man, you're rolling some dice there, because right now, Matt, your starting cornerbacks are going to be William Gay and Cortez Allen. Yeah,
that just depresses me, man, like to no end. I'm not impressed with either one. Gay has always been, in my opinion, more of a nickelback type of role, a good role player. Cortez Allen has the confidence of like nobody right now because of his year last year. So he has a lot to prove. He got a whole lot of money and did nothing. So you're right. This draft coming up has got to be defensive heavy through at least the first 3 or 4 rounds. You can argue depth at pass rusher and running back, on offense, depth at tight end or offensive line, maybe another running back or whatever. But the fact is they need to go defense heavy in this draft, and I would be shocked if they did not at this point. And one more thing on the free agency note is this whole comment from Colbert the other day of, in the wake of the James Harrison signing and the Jason Worlds departure, Colbert made the comment essentially saying that Worlds was never in their plans to begin with. And I don't know about you, and I think I tweeted this out like shortly after I read it. I'm like, that is the biggest crock I've ever heard. Don't tell me that the Worlds retirement did not catch them off guard. Don't tell me that they weren't throwing $12 million guaranteed at this guy, thinking he was going to be at least some part of your team in the future. So he retires. You sign Moats again. But then you're stuck with nothing, so you better hurry up and bring Harrison. So I don't believe for a hot second that Worlds was never in their plans. I think it's more backpedaling.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we had confirmed from somebody pretty close to the situation that they had made an offer of roughly $12.5 million, and basically said, here, go check the market and see what you can get, but no, this is what you can have coming back. And I think they knew about his religious affiliations, and from what I hear, they did. But you're right. I don't think they had any clue that he was in so deep that he was just going to walk away. And a lot of people want to tie this in with concussion injury, blah blah blah. He's leaving for his faith, and that's his business. That's his business. But you're right. I don't think they saw it coming. I think they knew it was there, but I don't think they thought he was ever going to walk away like the way he did.
Yeah. I just think it's a total crock, and I actually had to laugh when he's actually trying to sell me this story of how they weren't interested in keeping Worlds around. So, I had to kind of laugh when I read that. But just to kind of start to wrap things up a little bit here, the rules or the owners' meetings are in Phoenix for this week.
Yep.
What have you heard about the latest potential or newly implemented rules coming up?
Well, 3 things real quick on. Of course, we call it the Kelvin Johnson rule, where you have to complete the catch, and then we saw it in a much more dramatic situation with Des Bryant in the NFC Wild or divisional game. It sounds like they're not going to mess with that too much. It's going to mostly be still defined by the official. There's a few tweaks, but nothing major. Another thing that they're doing, and this is, the owners approved this tonight. They are going to have a certified trainer who's in the press box at every stadium for every game, and he or she will be tasked with the responsibility of watching every play and every player, and if he or she sees someone who looks wobbly, looks like they just got their bell rung, they can radio down to the field and have that player taken off. Now, it's not just a one-play thing. They would have to go through concussion protocol right there, and so they could miss 2 plays, 3 plays, 10 plays. We don't know. And, I mean, from my vantage point, I can't even imagine If Antonio Brown gets dinged or something, he's in a scrum of guys, and he stands up. He's fine. He stumbles over a clump of dirt. Oh, geez, that guy looks like he's out of sorts. I better get him out of the game. That's what my fear is going to be with this. And then the last thing is the extra point. A lot of talk about point after touchdown. The Roonies have pushed for the line of scrimmage to be moved up to the 1. They think that'll encourage teams to go for 2 more often. Now, there's another side to this. The other faction says we want to move it back to the 15. So you got, 32, 33-yard extra point. They think that would encourage, especially in bad weather, teams to go for 2 more often. So it's really interesting. And then, as we were talking about before the show, there's also a slight movement within some of the owners just to say to hell with it and let's just award 7 points, and unless a team wants to go for 2. And then they would just get 6 if they didn't make it. So those 3 things are the hot button things right now as far as the rules.
Yeah, and as far as the point after attempt, I mean, it's pretty much an automatic. A kicker's rarely going to miss one of those. If he does, it's once in a blue moon, and it's usually in bad weather or something like that. So, I mean, I'd be all for some type of scenario of giving the teams the option to go for 2 more as far as changing the field position, or kind of pushing them back to the 15 to kick the extra point. So I'm kind of okay with that, and I'm in your boat with this extra spotter up in the press boxes as well. I think if you limit it to only potential concussion issues, I can kind of maybe see it. Yeah. But you're right. If they start looking for a twisted ankle, or I dinged my finger, or I pulled a hamstring or something, if they start yanking players out left and right, I mean you're talking about in a critical situation. If Antonio Brown leaves the field, that's a huge loss. If your left tackle has to leave the game, that's a huge loss. So. Yeah. I mean, the NFL is so over the top about safety, and you know me, I think they're over the top ridiculous with half of it. But their heart's in the right place. They're trying. This is all about image. It's all about image, if you ask me. They'll bark about player safety 9 ways to Sunday, but they are trying to improve their image with the young and up and coming kids who are in Pop Warner and middle school and high school now, who are getting ready to go to college and want to play football. So the soccer mom and dads will let them play because they think the NFL is safe. And, you can tell me it's all about safety, and I'll tell you, yeah, it is a little bit, but it's more about image. I know it is. It has to be. That's just my cynical opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I think it's going to start out with these trainers up there. It's going to be completely head injury type stuff related at first, but you're right. That's another concern, too, is, if I see a guy like Richard Sherman, I think in the NFC title game, he hyperextended the elbow, and
right.
he's kind of shaking it out the whole second half, and I mean, can't you imagine if oh geez, Coach Carroll, you're going to have to get him out of the game now. They got to have him checked out. Again, I agree with you, Matt. I applaud what they're trying to do to make the game safer, but at the same time, I think by doing that, you're risking the integrity of the game. You're actually not really even making it football anymore. But, and so we'll see where this goes. And my answer for the whole PAT thing, and it goes for field goals as well, narrow those goalposts. I want to see kickers use accuracy. I mean, we know these guys can already kick at 65 yards in their sleep. That part there's nothing you can do about. But narrow the goalpost down a little bit. Make these guys have to be a little more accurate, and then I think you'd see some things really change, not just with extra points but field goals as well. And we wouldn't have teams kicking field goals quite as often. They'd probably go for it on 4th down a little more often.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're talking 40-plus yards out, if you narrow those goalposts significantly, you're going to have a lot more teams who might be going for it on 4th and 4 or something to that effect, rather than kicking a field goal of 45 yards or whatever. So, yeah, I agree totally. I'm in favor of some changes. I wish that they would implement the change about the pass interference not being a spot foul anymore. I hate that call.
Yeah.
I hate when you get a spot foul call. Make it a 15-yard penalty and be done with it.
Well, I mean, part of the thing is the Baltimore Ravens. That's part of their offensive game plan every week is to throw it deep on the first or second play and get an interference call.
Right.
And by the way, I have to say this. Did you see where the Ravens apparently are petitioning the NFL? They have to play at San Francisco and at Oakland this year, and they are requesting that those games be back-to-back weeks so they can stay out there.
I
you
don't doubt it
kidding
for a
me?
second, man.
Are you? And you just watch the league will bend over backwards for him. I about fell over when I saw that.
I would not put it
No,
past Ozzie Newsome to try something like that and John
no.
Harbaugh. Do not in a hot second.
I mean, it's a
Nope.
fair request, but come on.
I'm like, you know what? Every other team has screwy travel schedules when you're going east to west coast, so suck it
Yeah.
up and shut up.
Yeah. I mean, get over yourself. You know, just ridiculous. I couldn't believe it when
It's
I saw it.
ballroom. What do you expect? So, yeah, I hate him. You hate him. We all hate him. It sucks.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a fair amount here. You know, so I think the Steelers are, you know, just to kind of close up here. We thought they'd be a little more active in free agency. We knew they wouldn't be over the top active, but I was thinking maybe they would have been able to do at least one more signing. But you're right. The defensive market was really high this year, and of course they would have been looking mainly at defensive backs. So they have a lot of work to do. They are banking on the draft right now, big time, because there are so many holes on this defense right now for Keith Butler to fill. That it's really right now. I don't know that they can fill all these holes in one-on-one draft yet, because there's just the defense is getting completely retooled and they got depth issues everywhere. So we will explore that more in the future shows. But before we want to wrap it up, we want to thank our sponsor, of course, Body Tech Gym in North Hills, Pittsburgh. They've been with us for almost a year now, right?
I think it's closing in on a year, yeah. Very grateful to them. They've been fantastic. We've got them a nice banner on the homepage, and they've sponsored the audio podcast, and they're still sponsoring us now that our ugly mugs are on here. And just great. Hope to continue the relationship. And I think maybe unless something major happens, we'll probably be back in 2 weeks. And I think co-writer Chris is going to join us, because he's definitely the draft guru amongst us, but it's time he makes his appearance on here, I think, and so we'll get him on to discuss some of the guys that we're looking at in the draft, and plus we are going to have full-time draft guru Shane Hallam will join us eventually before the draft too.
Absolutely, that sounds like an awesome idea, and of course we'll also try and get Carlos on here, one of the newer writers here to the website on Steel City Blitz. Hopefully we can get him on this off season as well, see if he wants to make a podcast debut. But with that, we want to thank everybody for watching and listening. Of course, check out our sponsor, Body Tech Gym, North Hills, Pittsburgh. Google them. If you're in Pittsburgh, go work off all the beer and wings that you're eating this off season. And of course, keep checking out the site, steelcityblitz.com. Mark, Chris, and Carlos are putting out great articles all the time. Draft information, free agency updates, of course, podcasts. We got polls going on. I'm working on some new wallpapers, so all kinds of good stuff in the off season as we, kind of trudge our way through, the quiet time of free agency now, and then we'll ramp up to the draft. But I think that's it, man. You got anything else?
I don't. Keep checking not just the website, but of course Twitter and Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and we're over at FanCred. So we have a great social presence, and all of us try to interact as much as we can on those social media platforms too. And I know we don't get to everything, but we try.
Absolutely. Yep. Don't be afraid to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, FanCred, and wherever the hell else we are. But yeah, so thanks everyone for listening and watching to the SCB Steeler Fan Podcast and Hangout, presented by Body Tech Gym in North Hills, Pittsburgh.